Joining us here now, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the conservative news website The Daily Wire and host of the Ben Shapiro Show. Thanks for coming in.
And thanks for having me.
Okay, so how much damage did this Republican president just do to the Republican Party by throwing his support behind this Republican Senate candidate who, among other things, is an accused child molester?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's helping the image of the Republican Party among undecided voters, among the young, among people who are looking at which party is going to look for some sort of moral standard here, obviously. Do I think that Trump saying this has made a large difference in how people perceive the Republican Party? No, because we already were having the Roy Moore debate before Trump weighed in, and we had this debate partially about Trump during the 2016 election. So it seems to me that in terms of additional damage that he's doing, I'm not sure he's doing tremendous additional damage, but he's continuing to double down on the damage that's already been done.
Okay, listen to this. This is how Donald Trump rationalized his support for Roy Moore.
He totally denies it. He says it didn't happen. And, you know, you have to listen to him also.
He actually said that like about 10 times, that, you know, Roy Moore denies this. Is this all just because Donald Trump is desperate for a political win? He wants to get his tax cuts through, and so he needs that Republican seat in the Senate? Because it seems like there's more here than,
I really don't
just
think
Roy
that
Moore.
I really don't think it's that much about the tax cuts per se. I don't even think it's about a Supreme Court seat per se, if that were to come up. I think that there's this binary model that Trump has relied on politically, which is you got to vote for Republicans because Democrats are worse, and it doesn't matter what the Republicans have done. That's part of it. For Trump, the most obvious sort of political out here is to quietly back Moore, or to at least say as little as possible here. I think there also is the possibility that if he were to go after Moore really hard here about these allegations, that the next can of worm that's opened is we go back to all the allegations that were made about Trump personally in 2016.
And with that, I just want to, you know, does Donald Trump sort of identify in a way with Roy Moore? You know, Roy Moore is the outsider. He's, you know, he's been accused of all these allegations of sexual harassment. Donald Trump is accused of sexual harassment. Moore denies it. Donald Trump denies it. You know, Mitch McConnell does not like Roy Moore. Mitch McConnell does not like Donald Trump. You know, he does not see himself in Mitch McConnell. He kind of sees himself more in Roy Moore.
You know, I don't want to get into you know, psychoanalyzing the president of the United States. It seems like a dangerous business. But
a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I do think
booming business.
Yeah, I do think that you know, the president tends to side with whomever he feels there's a wave of media attention against. That seems to be his sort of his gut reaction, at least people who he is politically aligned with. And so for Moore, he sees the tsunami of media attention. And apparently there's an article in Politico today about how he felt like this was all staged and maybe the accusers were not telling the truth. Yeah, I don't know about that, if that's identifying with Moore as though Moore is innocent, but you know, I don't think it's unfair to say that the president feels very anti-media, and he does abide by a simple rule, which is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if the media hates Roy Moore, then maybe Roy Moore is my friend.
How difficult will it now be for Republican lawmakers in Washington essentially to force Moore out of this campaign, to say some kind of write-in campaign, or even refuse to seat him?
He's not leaving. I mean,
this is it.
The only person who may have been able to come down with both feet and try to push Moore out of the race was the president, right? But he might have been able to say, listen, everybody in Alabama, this is a disaster. He's running, at the very least from a political standpoint, he's now running neck and neck with Doug Jones. He may be running behind Doug Jones in a state that goes 66-33 Republican on a typical election. So, you know, if you really want to win the seat, abandon Roy Moore, move over to Jeff Sessions, for example. He could solve two problems. He doesn't like Jeff Sessions, apparently. Could move him out of the AG spot and have him run as a write-in candidate in Alabama. Trump didn't do that. Roy Moore was disinclined to drop out anyway, because that's Moore's kind of MO.
Last question. It's kind of related. It's about a piece you wrote on Tuesday in the National Review. It's about preventing sexual harassment. Here's part of it. Conservatives have long proclaimed that men, left unchecked, will act like pigs with regard to women. So you argue that what's needed is a return to traditional social norms, like sex would be connected with marriage, thus cementing the connection between sexual activity and commitment. Carefully cultivated rules of conduct between men and women, including in many religions prescribed physical contact, expectation that men would protect women in chivalrous fashion. It sounds like you're saying let's go back to the good old days. They were all so much better.
No, well, it's not really that. It's that there were certain... The basis for a lot of conservative thought is that human beings are inherently flawed, that we are sinful people who are capable of doing bad things. And that there are all these rules in place to protect women against men. Like, a lot of these rules were designed to keep men in check. This is why men were taught to be gentlemen. Now, not all men acted like that, and I think what the feminist movement and a lot of the left said was, these rules didn't keep men in check. What if we just get rid of all the rules? And now what's happening is a sort of an ad hoc formation of new rules, but these new rules don't really seem to be particularly coherent. So you'll see the same people saying that it's totally fine for men and women to go out to bars at night, whether he's an employer and she's an employee, and they get drunk together, and then if they have sex and everything goes well, it's fine. fine. But if they get drunk together and they have sex and it doesn't go well and she doesn't, and she's unhappy about it, then this was some sort of exploitative situation. You can see this in the split about Monica Lewinsky now, right? You're actually seeing some people on the left saying that Clinton should have resigned over Monica Lewinsky. At the time, they weren't saying that. They were saying it was a fully consensual relationship. What I'm saying is that whether you accept the conservative rules or a new set of rules, we have to have some set of rules that acknowledge that no matter how much we wish that men would stop being pigs, men are going to be pigs except if there are rules in place. And just shouting at the wind saying, I wish men would be better, I wish men would be better too. And that's why, I intend on teaching my son standards of behavior and teaching him to be a gentleman. It's what my father taught me. But I think that living in a standardless world and then just magically expecting human nature to change, I think, is a recipe for disaster.
You're not getting as far as Mike Pence, the vice president who would not eat alone with a woman who's not his wife?
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with Mike Pence's rule for Mike Pence. I think that the idea that this, by the way, this has been a long-standing religious tradition in Orthodox Judaism, is that men and women are not supposed to be alone in rooms with members of the opposite sex who are not their spouses.
But you're not saying that 20, 30 years ago that there was no sexual harassment,
of course not.
Women weren't being bothered. I mean, at least now there seems to be, it is safe for women to come out and say, I was sexually harassed by that guy.
And that's great. And I wish that had happened, 20 or 30 years ago. I wish that had happened 40 years. In fact, I think that some of what drove the feminist movement was exactly that, right? Was a rebellion against the Mad Men culture, this idea that there was this repressive hierarchy that was treating women as sex objects. But the problem is, are women not treated as sex objects now? Because it seems to me that every single person in Hollywood that I know of is now being accused of this stuff, and that is the most leftist, permissive society in America. So what exactly happened here? The point that I'm making is that the problem was not necessarily some of the rules. The problem was failure to adhere to the rules. The left tore down all the rules, and now they're trying to create rules through these backdoor mechanisms like yes means yes in California. Those rules, in many cases, are going to end up being more puritanistic than a lot of the original rules. Right? The rules in California, this yes means yes rule, is basically I'm supposed to have a lawyer there with me when I'm having sex with somebody, going down the checklist of consent. And that seems to me a lot less doable than an expectation that you're only having sex with the person you're married to.
We're out of time, but I guess at the end of the day, a return to common decency.
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea.
Exactly.
Ben, I've wanted to have you in for a long time. It's great to talk to you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it.